Okay, so let's talk about something that happens to, well, a lot of people, but it's something we almost never actually discuss out loud. It's that confusing, kind of worrying moment when, things suddenly change midstream. It brings up a ton of unspoken questions, but in this explainer, we're going to get straight to the science behind it all.
And there it is. That's the big question, right? It's a situation that can immediately send your mind racing, just filled with doubt and a whole lot of concern. But what's actually going on in that moment? Let's clear this up. Before we dive into the biology of it all, it's so important that we clear the air first. We need to tackle the fears and the worries that tend to rush in and fill the silence. So, let's start with what this is not about.
Yeah, do any of these sound familiar? It's just so easy for our brains to jump straight to these really personal conclusions. We totally internalize it, and we think it must be some kind of report card on our attractiveness, or his desire, or even the health of the relationship itself. Look, these are completely normal worries to have, but they're almost always way off the mark.
And this quote right here, it really just gets to the heart of the matter. This isn't some verdict on you or your relationship. It is the body and the mind simply responding to a whole bunch of other factors. So let's just take a breath and reframe this whole thing as a biological event, not some big emotional judgment.
So, if it's a biological event, let's start with the physical side of things. To really get what's happening, we first have to understand how the body actually prioritizes all of its different jobs. Okay, this concept of a non-essential function is, well, it's everything. Just think about it for a second. When your body is tired or sick or maybe just processing alcohol, its number one job is to rest and recover. An erection? That takes a lot of energy and blood flow. So the body, being incredibly smart, just decides to redirect those resources to more critical tasks. It's not a failure, it's just the body being efficient. And here are some of those exact triggers. Simple fatigue from a really long week or just one bad night's sleep. That's a huge one. Feeling even a little bit under the weather can be enough for the body to say, nope, not a priority right now. Alcohol, as we know, impacts circulation and nerve responses. And of course, after an orgasm, the body just naturally enters a recovery phase. All of these are purely physical, totally automatic responses. But here's the thing. The physical triggers, they're only part of the story. The brain is the real control center here, and what's happening in our heads can be just as important, if not more so. The brain can hit the brakes at any time. I mean, if he's stressed about a deadline at work, or feeling anxious about performing, or honestly just gets distracted by a weird noise outside, the brain can immediately divert its focus, and that mental shift sends an instant signal to the body to power down those non-essential functions we just talked about. Even a tiny change in stimulation can be enough to break that mental concentration.
Okay, so we've established this is a normal thing. But you might be sitting there wondering, but is it always normal? That's a fair question. So let's draw a really clear line between something that just happens occasionally and a recurring pattern that might be worth talking to a doctor about. This slide is probably the most important one for putting your mind at ease. Over on the left, we've got the normal stuff. It happens once in a while, and you can usually point to a reason, like, oh, he had a terrible week at work, or, man, we were both exhausted. It resolves itself. On the right, that's what could be a potential issue to look into. This is when it's happening a lot, over a long period of time, in all sorts of different situations, and it's causing real, consistent distress. Seeing it laid out like this really helps separate a normal biological blip from an actual pattern. So the crucial point, the main takeaway here, is that we really need to normalize this. An occasional instance is not a sign of a problem. It's a sign that you're with a human being whose body and mind are constantly juggling dozens of signals and priorities at once. It's just part of the package. And maybe this is the most important takeaway of all. Instead of seeing this as a moment of failure or rejection, what if we saw it as a signal? A signal of stress, maybe, or exhaustion, or just simple distraction. When you reframe it that way, a moment of anxiety suddenly becomes an opportunity for empathy, for communication, and for care. And really, isn't that what intimacy is all about?